Hello and welcome to today's topic, which is about tax and having the right mindset, is what I'm talking about here, as opposed to actually calculating your tax position. So, you just thinking about tax, does it make your heart race or give you sweaty palms? Can you feel your stress levels rising at tax time? Or at any time where you've got to deal with your financial paperwork, and maybe perhaps you're still even paying a last year's tax bill. It can all be very stressful and have an impact on how you think about your taxes. Now, one drawback of being an entrepreneur, of being self employed, is actually tax time, especially if you aren't on top of your financials. Yes, there are plenty of advantages, but tax time seems to be a real bugbear amongst entrepreneurs. And you know what? We don't want to pay any more tax than we have to. Who does really? But we do and need to pay our tax. It's part of our moral and legal obligation to the society that we are part of. Now, this is true, or appears to be true, even if you have an accountant or you're doing the work yourself. I noticed this throughout my 25 plus years that I had my accountancy practice, that people just really didn't want to have to deal with any of these tax matters at all. And in fact, throughout that time, I often used to think people were just complacent. They just didn't give any importance to tax. And that was before I realized that there was a whole mindset behind it. And creating an abundant mindset rather than having a scarcity one actually involves adopting a positive view towards taxes. So that means stopping the procrastination and just giving yourself some time to think about how you feel about tax and to make sure that there are no negative beliefs in there, as well as creating some great habits. So, having said that, let's get practical. Let's start with some practical suggestions. This is about building your habits. And habits just, it isn't just the practical elements of money management here. Habits actually forms part of your money mindset. So when we say, and I often say this, it's how you deal with money, it's 80% mindset, 20% management, but actually that management of money has a profound effect on your mindset because of the habits that you form when you deal with the practical elements, and when you deal with them well. So, what are the main elements and the main habits that you should be looking at in your business in terms of your money and dealing with your tax situation? Well, number one is to know your income. Do you know yours? I know I've asked many people over the years when people used to come into my accountancy practice, if I did see them as they brought in their books and records, one of the questions I'd ask is, how's business been this year? And there was often a mismatch there between the last year and the last year for the accounts, because often people are bringing in their books and records 6, 7, 8 months after their accounting year end or after the tax return year end. But I would often get blank expressions as well, and lots of vague answers because people just don't know how much income they are making in their business. So, in all seriousness, I'm asking you now, do you know yours? You see, knowing your business numbers, it helps you to make better decisions in your business. So it makes absolute sense to know them and know them well. And income is one of those figures. Of course, when you're growing your business, employing a bookkeeper or an accountant helps, but you still need to know what the figures. So don't think that, if I hire a bookkeeper, I don't have to think about my accounts, because you need to know the figures that this information is providing. And one of those is knowing your income. So if you don't know, make that a priority for you to go and find out how much income you've generated so far this year. Don't wait till tax time. The second thing is knowing your expenses. Rather than preparing your accounts, which is often, like I've said, for a lot of people, 6 months, 7, 8 months after the end of the year end. And then you look at the figures and you think, wow, did I really spend that? And you know what? Part of that is from forgetting what you spent, probably, 20 months previous or up to 20 months previous. But it's also that for a lot of people, they're spending on autopilot, very much the same as with their personal finances, rather than spending consciously. So you need to take control of your expenses during the financial year when you can actually do something about them. So stop paying unnecessary monthly payments that you have, and also create a budget for yourself. Now, I know a lot of people, when you say create a budget, they think, oh, it's like, I'm asking to wear some really tight corset that needs pulling in and making tighter and tighter, and it's just so boring and so restrictive. Well, budgeting isn't that. It's about giving your money a home. And if you're a lover of the law of attraction, then you will need to give your money a home. It's one of the requirements of it when you're tapping into the universal laws, because money needs a home. It needs to know, the universe needs to know what you're going to do with it. Your unconscious mind as well needs to know what you have planned for your money. Creating a budget is just doing that. You're just giving your money a place. You're saying in advance where you intend your money to go. And it doesn't actually have to be in detail, this budget. For a lot of people, I work with a lot of coaches and consultants who have a very simple business model. And for them, it could just simply be performing a review on what they're spending month in, month out. So the recurring payments that you have, slim those down. Very much using like the KonMari method when you're sorting out your personal, when you're decluttering personally with your personal artifacts, you would look at something and say under that method, does this bring me joy? When it comes to your business expenses, you should be asking yourself, instead of does it bring me joy, you should be asking yourself, do I need this to be in business or to enhance my business? Because if it's not a necessity of you operating your business the way you operate it, and it is not going to enhance your ability to earn more money, then you don't need it. So slim down your expenses. Then once you've got them slimmed down, you know how much you've got in recurring expenses each month. Then you just need to create a budget for everything else that you spend over that. And that could be as simple as saying, for all the books and the little e-courses and the bits of knowledge and all the other bits of things that I want to spend money on, I'm going to restrict that amount to X per month. Very simple terms, that's a budget, because you know what you're spending on a routine basis and you're putting a cap on so you don't overspend. You could overspend if there was something that you really needed, but at that point you've switched off the autopilot button and you're making that purchase more consciously. So budgeting, it can be useful. It doesn't have to be complicated. It depends, of course, on your business situation. The third habit to get into is knowing your monthly profit. Accountants' fees, I get it, they can be expensive. Some accountants, well, as an industry as a whole, they need to be upping their prices for the value work. But yeah, I do get it. It can seem expensive, even for this routine type work sometimes, particularly when you don't know what value that you can get out of it. And accountants as a whole, and I feel like I can criticize accountants having been one for the last 30 years, because even though I don't operate in accountancy practice anymore, I still consider myself part of the profession. But if you do find them too restrictive, to start with, why not just get quarterly accounts done? That's better than just wait until after the year end to do your accounts. And not until this point do you know how much profit you've made. You need to know as soon as possible on a continuous basis, because knowing your profit is the most important figure that you need to know in your business. It's more important than your sales figure. It's more important than your expenses. Why? Because your personal spending power, your ability to live the life that you want, is directly related to the amount of profit that you produce. You know, you could have a party and celebrate and post on Facebook and other social media outlets that, yes, I've created a £10,000 month this month. But what about if that £10,000 is in sales? But what about, your expenses? If they're £9,999, there's nothing to celebrate. All right, that's an extreme example, but you need to know and concentrate on how much profit you are making each and every month. It also allows you to get a tax estimate and making sure that you are saving enough. But actually, concentrating on monthly profit is also going to help you to concentrate on sales and make sure that you're not overspending on your expenses, because you're putting your focus here. The fourth element is to make sure the fourth habit, should I say, is to make sure that you are saving for your tax. Start from day one. And, if you've already been self-employed for a while, start now if you don't already save. Even if you're not working out your profit, you can do this. You can do it as a percentage of income. So setting a percentage, they do this, Mike Mikowicz does this in his book, Profit First, which is a book that I absolutely love. It's a great system, but it also helps you to put the emphasis on how much profit you are making each and every month. But you could also, if you don't know how much percentage to save, you could use last year's tax bill as an estimate, and just to divide out the total amount of tax you paid last year and divide it into 12 months and just save that each and every month. Or you could take the amount of tax that you paid and work it out as a percentage of last year's sales. So last year's profit as a percentage of last year's sales, and then apply that profit percentage each and every month to the profit that you are making in the current year, and that will give you a tax figure. Now, of course, if you're actually working out your profit and you're getting your accountant to do this, then they can provide you with a tax estimate, so you can make sure you're pretty much spot on with how much you are saving for your taxes. So, 4 great habits there. And once you get into all those habits, you'll find that the procrastination disappears, because it doesn't make sense anymore, because there's nothing to procrastinate about, because you've had these great habits throughout the year. You have practically all the information that you need, or the bulk of the information that you need to prepare your tax return. If you still are a little bit procrastinating about actually doing the return, and for some people I do get it, it's actually going online to the official website and pressing buttons which are committing your figures to the authorities. It can be, make you a little bit anxious. And there could be still a whole host of things that are going on in your belief system that are affecting you. One of the things you can do is start to think about, journal on these. Think about the advantages of completing your tax return as soon as possible. Think as many things as you can. To start with, as an example, you'll have peace of mind of knowing how much you owe. You'll have more time to save for your taxes. There are a whole host of things that will be an advantage to you completing your tax return as soon as you possibly can each and every year. So make sure that you are consciously aware of what those are. You can do this just by journaling. Now, I've already said, paying tax, it's a moral and legal obligation. So you just need to make sure that you get really, really comfortable with this fact. You could try writing a list. I love writing lists. Some people prefer just to call it journaling, but basically it's a list of points, whether you think of it as journaling or not. But write a list of things that paying taxes get you to be able to enjoy. The things that you can enjoy by living in a country that has a robust tax system, such as, refuge collection, a road system. There are state benefits if you need them. There's a whole host of things that are beneficial when you live in a society that has a system where people pay taxes. You can also work out what your actual beliefs are about taxation just by journaling, taking that time to sit and reflect, ask your unconscious mind, what do I actually believe about taxes? And maybe there's some fear there. Maybe you have childhood memories of somebody getting into trouble with the tax man, or there is something that's making you nervous. Find out what that belief is so that you can start working with it. Because there are lots of reasons why we can put glass ceilings on ourselves. And one of these things actually is tax thresholds. So paying tax in the first place, which could be brought on through a lack of knowledge, in which case you can go and get this knowledge very easily. You can talk to somebody like a financial coach or an accountant. But also there are things maybe from childhood about people paying taxes. So you start to put these glass ceilings in. Tax thresholds, like I said, paying tax in the first place. In the UK, we have a tax-free limit. Once people get over this, they get panicky about having to pay their taxes. They're still filling in a tax return below the limit, but they still put that glass ceiling in there as well. The next one is needing to register for sales tax as well. That somehow puts a glass ceiling because people now think things are going to get a whole lot more complicated. Yes, they do need to register for sales tax, so for VAT here in the UK. But again, you can get somebody to work this out for you. You don't have to do it all by yourself. So growing to a level where you perceive your tax affairs will become more difficult. And that can be at a variety of different income levels. You just need to know what those levels are so that you can work on dealing with those beliefs in ways that work best for you, such as EFT. So I hope that's given you plenty to think about your taxes, from setting basic money habits to thinking about how you think about money. So that's it from me today. I'll see you real soon.